In the last section, we started learning a little bit more about JSX. We learned that it's technically JavaScript, it's not HTML that we're writing, and we also learned that browsers don't know how to understand JSX code. So we use tools like Babel to take our JSX and then turn it into normal JavaScript. The final thing I want to throw in there is that the JSX that you and I are going to write is going to be almost identical in form and function to normal HTML, with just a couple of very small differences. So in this section, I want to go through a little exercise that's going to give us a better idea of how HTML and JSX are slightly different. We're going to put together a tiny little snippet of HTML over using CodePen. So we're just going to write out normal HTML, and then we're going to pull it into our React project and convert it into JSX. So this will give us a really good idea of some of the differences between the two. I'm going to first begin by opening up CodePen, by opening a new browser tab and going to codepen.io. Then once here, I'm going to find the Create button at the top right-hand side and click on New Pen. All right, here we go. As a quick reminder, if you want to get these editor tabs on the left-hand side, you can click on Change View or Settings. Actually, no, it's just Change View, sorry, and then select one of the different layouts. All right, so we're only going to be doing HTML here, so I'm going to minimize the other tabs, and we'll put together just a couple different elements. I'm going to put a div in here, and then I'll put in a label, an input, and a very simple button. And then on each of those three elements, we're going to add a couple of different attributes. So I'll first begin with a label. I'll give it the title of, how about enter name? And then after that, I'll put in an input, and then finally a button at the bottom. And I'll say something like submit. Okay, so just very simple, straightforward HTML. And I want to go through here and add on a couple of attributes. So on the label, I'm going to say that this is a label for some input with an ID of name, and then I'll immediately add an ID of name to the input. Now, just in case you're not familiar with this idea of for and ID, all that does is allow us to click on the label, and it will automatically select that text input. Then on the input, I'm also going to specifically annotate it as being a type text input. And how about on the label, let's give it a nice class. We'll say class label. We're not going to actually do any styling, but let's imagine that maybe we had some special styling class set up on the CSS tab over here to target an element with the class of label and style it in some fashion. And then finally, I think that submit button looks kind of ugly, so I'm going to put a little bit of custom styling on there. So I'll say style is going to be background color of blue. And I'll give myself just a little bit more space here. Now that turned the button blue, but it's definitely kind of ugly. So I think that I'll give it a color of white as well. Now we'll just turn the text on the button white. All right, so that's it. Pretty simple HTML snippet. And I hope that everything we put in here is pretty easy to understand. So let's now copy this HTML. We understand what it looks like over here. So we're going to copy this. We're going to go back over to our code editor and we'll paste it into our app component. And then we'll refresh our browser and see how this HTML displays inside of our React application. Okay, so back over here, I'm going to find the div that we currently have, and I'm going to delete it. I still have the return keyword, however. Don't forget that return keyword. And then I'm going to paste in the HTML that we just wrote out. Now, as a quick note, I just want to mention some different ways in which we can format HTML, or excuse me, format JSX. One thing that I see very frequently, see people who put the return keyword and then they put the first opening tag of the JSX block on the next line down. If you do this right here, it's going to result in an error. As soon as JavaScript sees that return message, it says, oh, okay, I'm just going to return. And there's nothing after the return keyword. So the function decides to return a value of undefined. So anytime that you return some amount of JSX, you have to make sure that the opening tag is on the same line as the return statement. A better way to handle this, in a way that's a little bit more following in convention in the community, would be anytime that you have a multi-line segment of JSX like this, you will instead put the JSX on the next line down, you will indent it, and then you will wrap it inside of parentheses, where the opening parenthesis is on the same line as the return statement, and then the closing parenthesis is after the end of the JSX, like so. So this right here is a very common convention, and we're going to be using this convention very frequently inside this course, anytime we have a multi-line JSX block, as we do right here. Okay, so everything you see on the screen is valid, so I'm going to save this. You'll notice that my code formatter automatically kicked in there again just to put a new line around the label. That's totally fine, totally equivalent. So now I'm going to flip over to my browser and see how this appears in the browser at localhost 3000. All right, so I could flip back over and you'll see that we immediately get a nasty error message here. You can read the error message if you want to, but I'll tell you what it means. Let's take a quick pause right here. When we come back to the next section, we'll investigate this error a little bit more and figure out exactly why our HTML did not translate directly over to JSX. So quick pause and I'll see you in just a minute.